Hello everybody, this is Dee with Seelbach, and I am here to give you all just a little bit of insight on our spider graphs that you've seen associated with our whiskey releases so that you guys can understand how we go through that process. Now, if you've already been on our site, then you have seen this spider graph here, and you'll see that it is separated by a few different categories. We've got floral and fruit, sweet, spice, herbaceous, grain, and oak. All of these can be coming from a different part of the process. All of these can be attributed to different things in terms of the whiskey. And this is just to give you a little bit of insight into how that works. Now, to help walk us through this process, I'm going to be using as an example, New Riff Bottled and Bond Bourbon. This is a great bourbon out of Kentucky. This is the bourbon that we always have in stock. And it's delicious. It's a really great place to start as a foundational bourbon so that you can understand as a baseline something a little more quintessential, so that you have something to compare to when we are tasting through things with special finishes, coming from different regions, so on and so forth. Now, when it comes to our spider graph, the first thing that I'm putting on that graph is notes about the nose. I don't do any tasting without smelling first, so that's always the first thing that I'm gonna indicate on a graph. On something like this, like New Riff's Bottled and Bond Bourbon, very quintessential in terms of what I'm getting on the nose. You're gonna get your vanilla, caramel, tiny bit of pepper, more white pepper than black pepper. There's some hints of fruit there, kind of candied orange, a little chocolate. There's something else there sweet that I'm not quite pinpointing out. It's not maple syrup, it's not honey. What is that? What is a New Riff? Maybe nougat, maybe butterscotch. It's something that you would expect to get in a candy bar, in a chocolate candy bar. Whatever that is, it's really nice. And so these are examples of the type of notes that you'd see listed under nose on the spider graph. And now let's taste. Now, if you've watched any of my tasting reviews so far, you'll notice that I don't only talk about taste, I also talk a lot about texture. I include both notes on the spider graph. On the palate of this New Riff Bottled and Bond Bourbon, I get a ton of cinnamon, a little bit of pepper, a little nutmeg. I'm still getting some orange, but orange oil. It's not candied anymore, it's just more orange oil. I get that both in taste and texture. Now, as an example of how that would be expressed on a spider graph, I would reference the orange oil under the fruit/floral column. And I would reference that both in taste and texture, I'm experiencing this orange oil. So, as an example, in taste, I would reference the orange oil. But in terms of how that orange oil affects the texture, I would express that as viscosity. There's definitely both oak and grain presence here. Now, more often than not, if I'm referencing something in terms of grain, it's usually along the lines of texture. Things like mouth-watering, mouth-numbing, viscosity, waxiness, silkiness, whether it's rough, whether it's smooth. These are things that tend to come from either the grain, the oak, or herbaceousness. As an example, if I reference that something has a smooth, buttery texture, especially if it's coming from a bourbon, that smooth and buttery texture is likely due to the grain. I've noticed that bourbons with a higher corn content actually produce a very smooth, buttery, creamy almost texture on the palate. I like to be able to reference that also because tasting is a full sensory experience. I get a little bit of spent coffee bean in this also. That could be coming from grain, that could be coming from oak. In this case, I'll attribute it to grain. There's a bit of smokiness there, a bit of roast that's happening, that I'll attribute to oak. The final thing you'll notice on our spider graphs is that each category is numbered between 1 to 5, 1 being the least amount of flavors being imparted on the spirit, 5 being the most. For me, 5 means that flavor is absolutely smacking me in the face. There's no avoiding it, there's no getting around it. It's the first thing I experience. And we get further away from that down the line, the least that those different flavors start to impart themselves. When it comes to finish, I will also write that down. I will also indicate that under the relevant category that it belongs to, whether it's a short, medium, or long finish, whether it's a spicy finish, floral finish, a sweet finish, so on and so forth. So you will see that listed on the spider graph as well. For our whiskey nerds that like to get into it as much as we do, we also make sure that we indicate the proof, We also make sure that we indicate any special finishing and any other factors that could impart something different onto the spirit. And that is it. If y'all have any more questions, anything else you want to know, feel free to DM us at Drink Seelbach on Instagram. You can also Instagram me at Dstilled on Instagram. And till next time, cheers.